Okay, so these are our 3 plant ID plants for Hort 300, and this just gives a really good intro or preview of what plant ID classes are all about, if you choose to take some plant ID classes in the future. So first plant that we're going to look at is Cercis occidentalis. Cercis occidentalis. This is the Western redbud. It is in the Fabaceae family. Water use characteristics are very low. It prefers full sun to partial shade. And its mature size is 10 to 20 feet tall by 10 to 20 feet tall. Generally, these do get to about full size of 15 to 20 feet tall if they're allowed to, which we prefer. Identifying characteristics of this plant. There are eastern redbuds, western redbuds. There's several different types of redbuds, all in the Cercis genus. The true identifying characteristic on this particular one is the leaf shape. Okay, it looks like a heart with no point at the apex. Okay, it's rounded, and sometimes it comes just in. You can see how at the apex it comes just in on that leaf, right? It turns in sizes. So that would be identifying characteristic on this one to be able to tell it apart from a Western redbud, or sorry, an Eastern redbud, or any of the other redbuds. Okay, this is a great plant. It is native to native to California. Let me just bring up a little bit of info on this. Okay, so native to much of California. And if I pop this over into here, this is CalScape information. And you can see the yellow area is where it is actually naturally found. So Eastern San Diego, there's some spots through the Los Angeles mountains, a couple along the coastal range where it's been naturally found. Northern California, Sacramento Valley Basin, and then on the eastern foothills of the San Joaquin Valley. Okay, so that is its spread. That into there, perfect. So it's considered a small deciduous tree or shrub, generally maxing out at about 15 feet tall, although we do see them up to 20 feet tall. Generally, it is grown as in natural form. You can occasionally find some nurseries that grow this as a standard, a little bit more difficult to find, but you can find it. The natural form or multi-trunk form is typically what we find this one grown as. And that's what you see it growing as in nature. The reason it's called red bud is because it gets these amazing quote unquote red buds on it, but really it's just a super vibrant pink from afar. That happens in spring and typically lasts until all the leaves emerge. And you can see a couple leaves emerging on this one here, but it's a really amazing spring show of color. In terms of fall color on this deciduous plant, it is definitely a California gold deciduous plant. Many California native deciduous trees and shrubs tend to not necessarily hit crazy vibrant reds and oranges in the fall when they're going deciduous, or when they're going dormant or falling into being deciduous. they hit a very nice tan yellow color, and this is pretty typical of it. Let's see, the winter lows that this can take, it can take down to down to 15 degrees. So very cold hardy. Again, close-up shot of the leaf itself. Okay, heart-shaped with no point to it. This one actually did develop some red to it. Typically that fall color though is just a yellow. This is partway through leafing out, right? Still holding on to some flowers. So really nice, changing spring interest. And another great shot of full-size Cercis in full bloom. So great plant to use. You find this one on a lot of street tree lists. It's typically the only street tree, only native street tree on a lot of lists. Little bit of information beyond the cultural characteristics that I've already gone through, as well as the origin being California. A little bit of information on the name itself, Cercis occidentalis. So Cercis is from the Greek kerkis, Kerkis. Okay, Kerkis. And what kerkis means is, it means weaver's shuttle in ancient Greek. Weaver's shuttle in ancient Greek. And on here you can see that the seed pod itself looks a lot like a weaver's shuttle. I'm not a big weaver myself, but apparently this is what people use to weave. So having a little bit of background on the name itself, I feel is very helpful because it tells you a little bit of something, some sort of identifying characteristic of that plant itself. So Cercis Cercis occidentalis. Cercis is for kerkis, ancient Greek for weaver's shuttle. Now, occidentalis means western or from the west. So we have the Cercis occidentalis, which is the western redbud, and then the very commonly used other Cercis is the Cercis canadensis, and that is the eastern redbud. Okay, so Cercis occidentalis. To review, Cercis occidentalis, common name is western redbud. Family name is Fabaceae. It is a low or a very low water use plant. Typical sizing on this one, about 10 to 20 feet tall and wide, and can take full sun to partial shade. Next plant on the list is Rhamnus californica, or also known as Frangula californica. It used to be that it was just Rhamnus californica. Through DNA and some research and some scientific changes, we had a change in the name. The new recognized name is Frangula californica. Frangula californica. There we go. That's a pretty good representation of Frangula californica or Rhamnus californica. The common name is coffeeberry or California coffeeberry. And this is the reason why it's called coffeeberry. Okay, it develops some really cool berries that have some great wildlife benefit. Okay, it provides food for wildlife. It is in the Rhamnaceae family, and it is low water use in the Sacramento region. low water use in the Sacramento region. So when we're talking about our water uses, we're using the WUCOL's water use classification of landscape species. Okay. The size on Rhamnus californica is 6 to 8 feet tall by 6 to 8 feet wide. And that is no joke. Okay. It does get to 8 feet by 8 feet. Now, this is just a nice green shrub. There's never any like amazing displays of flowers. It's relatively inconspicuous. You don't select this plant for its flowering. Really cool parts about this plant are the young stems. Okay. The immature wood has a beautiful red to it. Identifying characteristic on this one is that the margin is slightly undulated and it rolls under. Okay, you see how that rolls under? Again, on the flowers, the relatively inconspicuous greenish yellow flowers appear in May to July and produce showy berries that are first green, then turn red, and then finally black when ripe. It is a hardy shrub that can grow in most soils, although it prefers sandy, well-drained soil. Grows in full sun to light shade. Hardy down to 5 degrees. Okay, so here we go. Here's our spread. Again, California native. And this is our natural occurrences throughout California. Now, interesting info about this plant. I often see this plant utilized in large parking lots, okay, where typically Indian hawthorn or Rhaphilepis indica is used, right? And we've talked about these plants and why many plants are selected for those sort of like very low maintenance needs and incredible hardiness. Rhaphilepis is used in those cases really often because it's pretty soil in particular. It can take the crazy beating sun, full blazing sun, and reflective heat off of asphalt surfaces incredibly well. Now, again, the reason that plants like that are used is because they will work in a variety of different situations, and other than having to be hedged constantly, they're pretty dang hardy and low maintenance. Well, I would encourage you guys to consider using California natives that fit the exact same bill on that one. Okay, so Rhamnus californica. Let's see, info on the name itself. Info on the name is that it is, let's see. Rhamnus derives from the ancient Greek rhabdos, R-A-B-D-O-S, meaning a stick, in reference to the presence of woody spine on the end of each twig for certain species. Okay, so on some species of Rhamnus, and potentially called frangula at this point, some of the species, this one does not, but some of the species have a point, like a little pokey thing at the end of the tip. Okay, so Rhamnus, and then californica just means simply of or from California. Now, important to know that, yes, mature size on this one, 6 to 8 feet by 6 to 8 feet. Okay. Ultimately plan on it being 8 feet. I have seen these things hedged, but we know that what that does for plants. So to keep it smaller. So what I would encourage you to do is look at different cultivated varieties on this one. There's a lot of them. One in particular is called Mound San Bruno. Mound San Bruno grows to 8 to 12 feet wide, but only 3 to 4 feet tall. There's also, I think, Eve Case. Yes, Eve Case, which grows to a little bit smaller than the straight up species. And actually, there's been a lot of other ones that have popped up, not a lot, but several that have popped up recently that are even smaller than that. I can't remember the names because they just came out within the last couple of years. But so great plant to use. It's beautiful. It's a large green shrub. Okay, but it's a California native, low water use, works in a lot of different soils. And if you need a different size, find a cultivated variety that may work for the size condition that you're working in. Last plant on our short list, one of my favorites, Calamagrostis acutiflora Carl Forster. Calamagrostis acutiflora Carl Forster. This is an ornamental grass, and it is a narrow, upright growing plant. So size characteristics on this one are 3 to 5 feet tall, and that's just the bloom portion, by 2 to 3 feet wide. Typically will max out at 3 feet wide. I generally will plant these at about 30 inches on center if I'm doing something like this, okay, where I want to create a huge mass of them. You can also plant them more singularly at further distances on center, same as this. You can see these are very mature stands, 3 feet wide, but very upright, not billowing out habit. The foliage portion generally mounds to a max of 3 feet by 3 feet. But again, the height that it gets, that starts in spring and matures to the height in early summer, starts out, goes up to 4 to 5 feet tall, sometimes more. The plumes on them, the flowers on them, start out as a purplish, fade to almost a white, and finish to a beautiful straw tan. Now, this is in the Poaceae family, so it is a perennial grass that does have a dormancy period in the wintertime. Now, nice thing about this one and many of the most of the other plants in the Poaceae family is that when they're dormant, you can cut them down to the ground, making sure that you don't damage the apical meristem at the crown. And that's the only thing that you have to do throughout the entire year. I have seen it and I have experienced it on projects where heavy windstorms come through in the wintertime and will really batter these the foliage on this. And at that point, sometimes if you want to keep some of it, you can cut just the plumes down to the foliage, just to tidy it up. And then there's some clients that don't really like the overall color. So they don't like the overall color of the tan or brown at that point in the winter. So you might want to cut them down a little bit early. So you just have to kind of weigh it out with the particular client, what their tolerance level is. So, but very easy to maintain, beautiful, great plant. Now, the name should tell you a couple. Oh, this is a good example of course, winter. The hardiness is super low, down to 15 degrees. And obviously this is a snow condition, which we don't experience in Sacramento region, but can be used in these kind of climates. But this is a really good example of what it looks like in the wintertime. So it looks really cool, but there's some clients that think that looks untidy and need to get rid of it. So use your best judgment on that. On this one, the name indicates a couple things, right? The name tells us that it is a hybrid, Calamagrostis executiflora Carl Forster, and it is a um, uh, uh, cultivated variety. Okay, and this is a really popular one. So a little bit about the name. Let's see. The Calamagrostis executiflora came from the parents being Calamagrostis epigejos, Epigeejos, with Calamagrostis arundinaceae. Okay, so those are the parent plants. And then it was named after a guy, Carl Forster. I think he had a lot of horticultural ties or contributed significantly, so he earned it. Anyways, that is info behind the name. Hold on just a second so I can pull up one thing for you. The genus name simply means reed grass. Calamagrostis simply means reed grass. And acutiflora means that it has acute flowers. Okay, so a little bit of info behind that name. Now, when you're answering the question on the quiz, it is 100% acceptable to answer Calamagrostis ex acutiflora Carl Forster. It's also 100% acceptable to simply use Calamagrostis Carl Forster, because if it's a cultivated variety that is of a hybrid, then you can simply say the genus with the cultivated variety. Okay, and those are your 3 plants. Thank you very much.